Hi guys. So today I'm going to talk about baby boomers. Do you wish you were a baby boomer? Are you a baby boomer? In today's economy, people are going through so much rough times and struggle. It seems like a lot of them doing pretty well are the baby boomers. So let's just check out some stats that we have about baby boomers first. So baby boomers are those that were born between 1946 and 1964. And they said that the baby boomers had it pretty good because it was favorable post-war economic conditions. They had strong wage growth, access to higher education, and I'm sure at a much cheaper price than what it is today. They were able to build wealth and home ownership. Oh yeah, home ownership, the big thing that's going on today with people not being able to buy homes, they were able to easily get into home ownership and have a good, comfortable life. Um, and then they say they also benefited from safer economic um, conditions. And I would say I have to agree because I do know baby boomers. I'm a product of a baby boomer, and some of the things that they had in their growing up and early adulthood and middle adulthood years, I know for a fact it does not exist in that same way at all today. So let's just take a look at some of the things that are considered economic advantages that baby boomers had. Affordable housing. Well, that's a fact because housing in a lot of cases actually made sense with wages in that period of time.
Rises were also rising around that time.
Employer benefits. So they said many of them had generous employer provided benefits and pensions. The key word there, matter of fact, they could take away all of that other stuff and just put pensions. The average job today, 99, I feel like it's not 100%, but it's so close. Dude, they no longer offer pensions. It's just this 401k stuff. It's just this 401, and everyone doesn't even offer a 401k, but the pensions when you could work for one company for 20 years, 25 years and get a pension and then live out the rest of your years, these jobs don't really offer pensions. And I have to do some further research because there was a video I saw about a gentleman. He worked for a company, he did retire and get a pension, but then the company went, I don't know if they were bankrupt or they, whatever happened, he no longer got his pension. He was working at Walmart. So I want to see if I can find that and do that on another video. So
Hmm.
the pension that he was guaranteed because he put in his time, he ended up now working at Walmart at like 80 some odd years old. Okay. They were also able to have wealth accumulation. Yeah, a lot of them were able to buy homes with just even one person in the household working. Nowadays, you have multiple people in the household working, and it's still a struggle because everything is so high. So I would say there was some economic advantages for sure for baby boomers. So again, are you a baby boomer? Do you wish you were a baby boomer so you could experience the quote unquote American dream that a lot of folks are just having total difficulty trying to achieve today? People are literally working themselves into the grave trying to earn enough money to achieve the American dream because they're not part of the baby boomer generation. Yes, we're not, we know there's folks that are doing just fine. We're not talking about those folks. We're talking about the average person. We're not talking about the exceptions to the rule that are rich or people that are close to rich or have a lot of family support and a lot of family economy. Everybody's not fortunate enough to have that type of situation. And then it also says social progress. Boomers benefit off of that. Technological transition, right place, right time argument. Let's see what they say. People are arguing that boomers were fortunate to enter a booming economy with fewer financial risks like student debt crisis and high risk investments, and they had a more stable path to middle class success. I would say so. I think a lot because I do know some baby boomers, several of them, and they did. And I'm not going to say everybody because you can't say 100%, but they did have more options to build wealth. They did have more options to become homeowners for less money. They didn't need two and three jobs to do it. Um, if they wanted to have a pension, they could have gotten now. I mean, even back in the day, you could get into a lot of the boomers got into government jobs and they were able to. work those jobs without any fear of losing their job and get a pension. Now this current generation that's in government jobs, they don't have those same protections anymore. They don't even have, that government job used to be like the end all be all, and they're, see on the news any other day, they're, coming out of offices crying because they're no longer employed by the government. So, there just was a lot of pathways, school. I just think we're not living in baby boomer time now, but the baby boomers are still here. Many of them are still here. They're all not passed on. They're all not transitioned. And, you have some that are doing really well, but then you had some, I would say, that were born in that generation and didn't take advantage of these opportunities that they've mentioned. They didn't take advantage of affordable housing and go buy themselves a home and keep it. They didn't take advantage of staying on a job to where they could collect a pension. And a lot of them are in a situation of financial distress along with the current generations because they didn't jump in and were able to take advantage of that for whatever reason. um, they don't have a home, they don't have a pension, they're living off of benefits because, hey, the cards they didn't, the hand that they played, it didn't play out well. So let's just talk about a couple of things here. Do we think that with baby boomers having all these benefits, do we think that they were generous with their children? Do we think most of them were generous with their children? Do we think that only some were? Or what do you think the ratios are with baby boomers and how many of them wanted to share that goodness with their children? Do you think you're always gonna have good parents that prepare and try? And do you think some, haters, and they didn't try to pass down things to their children? They want to just enjoy it for themselves to the bitter end.
Well, I think for the certain baby boomers, a lot of them didn't care much for the success of their children or the future generations because due to my research, I found that a lot of them pursued policies that prioritized short-term self-interests and securing their wealth in the expense of the future generations not having much sustainability.
Well, definitely seem like those old heads that's down there in Congress and DC, and even though all the parents and boomers that were getting those benefits, it definitely don't seem like they was out there, holding up no signs and putting in no footwork to make sure what they got, the next generation got. It definitely seemed like there was some type of gap or black hole when it came down to the next generation because somebody didn't sustain something. Could it be all by design, by the powers that be? Possibly. But even with that being the case, why didn't the baby boomers try to help even their children? You hear countless stories of children of baby boomers talk about how they were put out at such young ages from the home that they didn't even have a chance to, finish school if they were going to go to school. They had to, work because baby boomers have this idea, some of them, that everybody else is lazy except them. But the truth is, I don't think that's the truth. You're always going to have lazy people in every group or generation, but I don't think boomers got everything that they had access to because they weren't lazy. Some of these were just policies, right? Interest rates being a certain way. And even if they weren't super low, the prices of homes were much lower than what they are. And it made sense with the wages of what people were earning back then, especially with all the economic growth. Ain't no way in the world you can say it was so crazy difficult if only one person had to work in a household and you were able to have a home. That's just, we see couples today that are dual income, no kids, both are working and they struggling to have a home. So clearly
Right.
there's a distinctual difference between the experiences of time of both groups.
Yeah, the change is very, very drastic between back then and now. And many people online are saying that it's the baby boomers' fault that the economy is shaped the way it is now. So I pulled up a few videos right here, and we will hear them discuss why they say their opinion. And we'd love to hear in the comments if you agree with them. So let's get into it.
They came out and announced that the housing market in the U.S. is the most unaffordable in American history. And I know a lot of people, they give Generation Z a hard time, but this is why I don't knock Gen Z. And it's because they inherited a rigged game. People like to talk shit and say they lazy, which I know a lot of them are. But at the same time, no matter how hard most of them work, they never gonna be able to beat the system in this economy because they got to work 5 to 10 times harder to get the exact same life that their parents and grandparents had. And I remember talking to my uncle about this.
He made a good point. He used the word rigged. And I would have to say that a lot of it is rigged. Because if the money is printed that we all get into the economy, the money is not actual tangible in terms of like gold or silver. It's fiat currency. Yet the prices of everything, the price tag keeps changing to these unaffordable amounts on everything from food, clothing, housing, rent, medicines, gas, everything that you buy for normal consumption, but the wages are not growing. It doesn't matter how hard, and then the employers don't want to allow people to work overtime. They want to keep them
Right.
capped at a certain amount of hours. Some employers will let you work overtime, but others won't. And then think about it: when you work overtime, that overtime is taxed at a much higher rate than your standard work hours. So you're really running on that treadmill on in that gerbil race really hard, and the home price is still going to be what it is. Then they're going to raise your property taxes. Then they're going to raise your home insurance because you have a mortgage and you have to maintain homeowners insurance. I mean, I would say it is rigged when you think about how, even though the money is not truly, a real thing, it's the schema that we operate within. And if I only needed $20, 50 years ago, why do I need $3,000 for the same product now? And the product isn't any better. It isn't any more. It isn't going to last any longer than the original product. Actually, probably the older products were better and cheaper. It does. He says rigged. I have to find that there's some validity in it. Does feel really rigged. This whole system that we're living
Yeah. So let's see what more he has to say.
Right, he was telling me how he got his first apartment in the '80s, and he had no roommates. And he was telling me how his rent was $300 a month. His car note was $75 a month. He said he was making around like $1,800 a month. He said you could get a brand new car for around $5,000. So only making $1,800 after expenses is paid, he still got over $1,000 a month to save. Now I know a lot of people they're gonna hear that, right? They're gonna be like, well, $1,800 a month in the '80s, that's a lot of money. But in 2025, that's only equivalent to around $65,000 to $70,000 a year. While those same expenses that I mentioned, they didn't 10 to 20x in some cases. So even while that person today who's making 65 to 70,000 making more money, their buying power is much weaker. So their savings is still going to be lower than that person that was making less in the '80s. Do people not understand how ridiculous that is? Which is why, in my opinion, we don't give boomers enough flack. Because after World War II, right, they inherited a booming economy, cheap education, strong union, rising wages, and they had affordable housing. They inherited all of that, but at the same time, they the generation that drove up costs, took away pensions, sent jobs overseas, crashed the housing market, and now act like young people are lazy for struggling in this economy without caring or putting any of it into context. It was a period of time in America, right, where you could work at a factory, have a family of 5, and be able to buy a home and to afford to maintain this home. While today in a lot of major cities, you got people making 6 figures or close to six figures that can't afford a family. They're going to be renting forever. So it's really a rigged game. And I really feel it for specifically Generation Z. So they came out and announced.
well, he made some good points. That's what I was talking about earlier. How can it be that one person could work, years ago and have children and have a home and pay their bills and have everything that they need to have? And one person is while the other person stayed at home to be a homemaker, raise a family, or whatever. And now you have multiple people working, and they can't afford childcare. They can barely afford to put the kids in childcare. But I would say rigged is a good word that he used. Scam for
Yeah,
sure.
the math back then made a lot more sense. Things were more equal, people had way more opportunities. Nowadays, it seems no matter how much you make, no matter um you may see hiring jobs that say they hire, but then they don't hire when you apply for it. So it does kind of seem like everything is pinned against Gen Z. And with baby boomers calling this generation lazy, it begs the question, do they take any accountability since they're kind of the reason why the economy is now the way it is?
I don't think they take accountability. I think a lot of them have their nose up in the air saying what they did and what they achieved and throwing it up in the younger generation's faces. Like, I got this, I worked hard, and I did this, and I worked hard. And yeah, there's going to be lazy in every generation, but I don't think the people that are out there working 50, 60 hours a week, begging for overtime, and the employers are like, not only are the employers saying no, 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 they're also laying you off. So it's not that everybody doesn't want to work. Some situations you are working and then you suddenly no longer have a job. And if you don't have a job, now you're losing everything. Because things are so expensive, those savings that people might have if they manage to save, it's not going to last them as long as it would have lasted them had things been more affordable, lower price. Because the
Right.
savings could stretch out longer while they try to find other ways to make money, other employment. So I don't think they have any accountability when it comes down to that. You see really, really old folks still in Congress, and they're like so old that they, forget where they are, but they're still there, getting guaranteed health care, guaranteed benefits. Um, they don't even make space for the newer generation to get into those areas. So I don't think they're holding themselves accountable. I think lazy is what you hear a lot. They're lazy. We don't want Gen Z. We don't want Gen X. We don't want this. We don't want that. But what did they do to help make it? But does the government overall bear some responsibility in this? When we change from pensions to 401ks, but who in those generations, the baby boom generation, who was steadfast to fight for the next generation to make sure those things didn't go away? It kind of seems like it was not too much fighting because it's all gone. But let's
Right.
let's move on and see what the next person is talking about.
Something I'm really, really, really tired of having to talk to people about, having to argue in the comments with people who do not want to listen. That being said, this person says, genuine question. So I'm going to treat it like a genuine question and just be done once and for all, hopefully. The boomer generation quite literally came in a boom. There were tons and tons of government programs that were set in place to make sure that they succeeded. They had affordable cost of living. They had wages that were sustainable. You could literally work part-time in high school and save for college because college and everything else were affordable. As the boomer generation got older, a lot of them got into politics and they pushed forward programs to make sure that all the leg ups that they got cut. Unions got busted. Capitalism, like super capitalism, really got pushed forward to the detriment of the everyday worker. Hell, credit scores were something they never needed, but they pushed them into place without making sure anybody had any financial literacy and actually going out of their way to make sure that places did not have financial literacy.
Wow,
And
that's interesting. I didn't know that they didn't have to have a credit score back then. Because credit scores is all you ever hear about.
Hmm.
The having a credit score. What's your credit score? Oh, you don't have any credit. Oh, you can't get approved for this. Oh, your credit is bad. You're not getting approved for that. So that's pretty amazing that they didn't have credit scores. The boomers didn't have to worry about credit score to get stuff. So the ones who really didn't succeed, is it safe to say that they weren't trying to succeed then? Because it kind of seems like the red carpet was laid out for them. No credit score needed. Everything is sustainable in terms of wages, education. So I mean, is it safe to say that it was a red carpet, and those that made it, they made it because they were active in society, even if it was part time, and the other ones maybe they didn't choose to work at all. Maybe they didn't choose to do anything.
I feel the ones that didn't choose to do anything was because they were really comfortable and a little spoiled and thought those benefits would stay there forever.
They probably were getting government housing, government everything for those who weren't participating because, welfare reform, you know, that stuff that happened, later on. So, maybe they were able not to participate because the freeloader benefits was just as good as the working benefits. That could be a possibility. Let's see what else she's talking about here.
and all the time people argue, well, that was the politicians. That's politicians' fault, not boomers. Boomer politicians did this. And yes, we can hold boomers accountable because how do you get politicians in office? You vote them. And what happens when a politician does something you don't want them to do? You can vote them out. It's not like they're Supreme Court justices and are there for life. These people have to be voted in over and over again. So, yes, the boomers, who were the biggest generation for the longest time, are to blame because they kept voting them in over and over again. Thanks to them being voted in place, we see all these safeties, all the leg ups that they were given, all those programs thrown out the window.
Mm.
With the help, basically, of the people putting them in office, other boomers. And who've continued to keep them in office? Other
Well, the
boomers.
boomers,
Protect.
they on their way out the door. They getting up there. So what's going to be the disaster that's left behind? We already know the economy is bad. We already know things are unaffordable. We already know they're locked into a lot of homes that they didn't sell. We know a lot of them have strained relationships with their family. Some have great ones, but we know there's a lot of cases where families are estranged. What is it going to look like when all these boomers start transitioning? And are these homes going to be sold for ultra cheap, or are they going to just sit on the market and just deteriorate? Just fall into a dilapidated status because they had it good, but they're not going to be here forever. And here comes the rest of the struggling generations behind them. And what's sad, I think, is that when you have those politicians doing these things, and politicians are still writing things that don't make sense for the average working person. um, where was the longevity to this? Is there going to be some type of one world income? Because if there's not going to be jobs because of AI, whereas they had the ability to work on these factories, these warehouses at McDonald's, or anywhere pretty much and make a living. If all this stuff is going away and jobs not hiring, what's that picture look like? They definitely got the benefits out of it, but what does it look like going forward? It's going to be pretty interesting as the boomers do start to transition on to the next dimension of life. Let's see what else the next person's got going on here.
Take is that I don't believe that old people should be in charge of anything, period. Like after a certain age, I don't care how intelligent, wise, or socially aware you are, your decisions impact other people more than it will impact and affect you.
Right?
Like, take climate change, for example. Boomers grew up with that shit. Like, that was something that they discovered. And they've known about it from its inception and still to this day make policies and run their businesses as if it does not exist because it won't affect them. Love and respect for the elders, but it's time for y'all to be advisors instead of leaders, chiefs, executives, etc. I don't even think y'all should be driving, but that's another video. My most
I
conservative.
agree with that.
So is he saying it won't affect them because he's pretty much saying they're not going to be around too much longer? So that's why they don't care about the environment and what's happening because they're getting their benefits now and not to worry about anything later on.
I can understand why someone would have that point because if someone much older, they're not going to deal with the consequences more than likely. I feel like a younger person should be in that role to lead because they get to see the state of the world and how it will affect everybody else. They'll be able to relate to the younger current people more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also old people, they're more stuck in their ways. They may feel that the stuff that might have worked for them back then would still work for this person, or not be in touch with how difficult it may be for the current generation.
Yeah, I do think some of them are totally out of touch. I hear some of these politicians say things, and it's like, and they say affordable housing. They'll throw out buzzwords like that, and it's like affordable to who? Affordable to a politician, or affordable to an everyday person working at these jobs that refuse to give wages and wage increases? And there's some jobs. First of all, the federal minimum wage is still what, $7.25. Why has that not changed?
Right.
There's nowhere I can think of in this country that you're gonna live a pretty decent life at the minimum wage. And don't say, well, go to school and get a skill. Again, if everybody went to school, if every college that graduated, every freaking other semester of people, they all got out and went for a job. First of all, they can't find jobs in what they're going to school for. The jobs play games with ghosting with the applications. So let's not just say work harder and you won't get those wages. It's not true because you have people with really advanced degrees that are working run of the mill jobs because the quality of job and availability is not there. So, we can't just keep saying for every excuse, well, you should go into school or you should try harder. People did all those things. They did everything they was told to do. You have a lot of people. Yes, you had the people that did absolutely nothing. Obviously, you do nothing, you get nothing. So nobody's going to dispute that. But you do have folks that did go to school. You do have folks that did get a skill. You do have folks that have been trying and they've lost their businesses when the pandemic. They've lost their livelihood when they got laid off from this job and another job. So you can't really blanket that with everything of just saying people need to try harder, because how hard can you try when you're in an economy? Things are set up and established a certain way. And I do find it odd that we can't bring prices down in this current economy, but we have always have funds to send all over the globe to other places that have their own issues. I
Right.
just don't understand why we can figure that part out, but we can't figure out how to make life a bit more sustainable for the average working person, and actually start holding some corporations accountable for what they're doing to their personnel and their staff. And no, we don't own the job. We don't own anything. Hell, you get a house and don't even own that, because if you don't pay the taxes or you miss your payment, they'll take that. So, I think we can use some great improvements overall, as the way society runs.
I agree because nowadays you have to work and work and work, and it's just to survive. And even then, you're not too sure if you're going to survive. Whereas that phrase, work harder, go to school, that definitely applied better with the baby boomers because they had a lot more opportunities and benefits on their side.
And that lower debt burden makes a difference. Now people are terrified of going into these schools, these school mills, these degree mills, because they're going to get a degree if they go, but then they're going to be in so much debt. And then they're going to try to find a job. They're going to do 2 million applications, and they're only going to get hired at the Burger King, the one last Burger King that's left over. And they're never going to be able to get out of debt. They're going to be in debt over their head. And that's not debt that they can live in. It's like as a home mortgage, right? Where you can live in the home while you pay it off. This is just debt for the education that you got, was translated into no money in this economy. So I don't know, but the point is, I think they had a great economy. And just a basic search shows that they had just a totally different reality. I think a lot of them are still stuck in that mindset because that is what they experience. That's their true experience. Everything was good. They felt like they were working really, really hard, even though I think hard, the definition of hard has changed between then and now, because people are working like 12-hour days, 15 hours. I mean, some people out there really, really, really going, to trying, and it's still not enough. So let us know what you think. Are you a boomer? Do you wish you were a boomer? What are you trying to achieve today that you think you should have been able to achieve already by now, but you can't because of the current economics and financial situation in society? What do you wish could be different? Do you think the boomers even care about what's left because they're heading on out the door? Let us know what you think. Thank you for listening. We appreciate your time.
And have a good one.